Hi, everybody. Oh, as soon as I clicked to switch to my camera and unmute my microphone, I see Dana saying, TikTok Shives. Hi, everybody. Um, yeah, Geek, I did technically go live a little bit before 6 p.m. Eastern. I went ahead and clicked the go live button knowing that I was still going to be waiting until it clicked over to 6 so that I could close off the question form. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. So, as usual, I will be responding to my pre-submitted patron and member questions first thing. So, if you are in the live chat and you have a question or something you want me to talk about, or you were planning on being generous and throwing in a super chat or something like that, if at all possible, please hold all of that stuff until I get through all of the patron and member questions. And then I will spend the rest of the show just hanging out with the chat and talking about whatever you want to talk about. So, Dana, I know I could, and I've actually thought about that. I've thought about just making the cutoff like 5 minutes before showtime, but then that would be taking away your TikTok shives. And why would I want to do that? You seem to enjoy it so much. So, anyway, I am now turning away from the live chat for the moment, for the time being, to turn to the patron and member questions. So here we go. Let's see what we have this time around. The first question is from the repudiating Roman, who says, so I'd say that I'm surprised, but I'm not. I did see that coming a mile away. I guess my question for this week is, Steve, would anything surprise you at this point from certain elements of our society? P.S. I personally thought Section 31 was 7 out of 10. I would have loved it as a series, but it kind of shows at the seams how they kit bashed 3-episode scripts together for the movie. Hopefully, they do more movies that start/are planned as movies first. Would love to see Michelle Yeoh again in Trek. Would you welcome another attempt? Well, first of all, in terms of would anything surprise me? If they saw reason, if they came to their senses, that would genuinely surprise me at this point. If Trump said or did something that actually caused a majority of Republicans to turn on him and stop acting like cult members, like that would surprise me. See, and I've seen this, people have said before, like that the Section 31 movie feels like they just kind of smushed the first 3 episodes into a movie. I think maybe that is a side effect of how we've become accustomed to how terrible the writing of so many streaming shows is, because there wasn't enough plot there for 3 episodes, or at least there shouldn't have been. Can you imagine if that movie had been stretched out to 3 episodes? That's awful. There's not enough plot there for 3 episodes. There's barely enough plot there for 1 movie. It's to think of that as being told across 3 episodes is just ridiculous. But I can sort of imagine how they would do it, because there are streaming shows that are written that way, where it's one long story for the entire season instead of being more episodic. That's the way they tell the stories. They take forever to get anywhere. So, yeah, no, that's not, I don't think that would have improved it. and when I watched it, I certainly wasn't thinking, oh, this is 3 episodes worth of stuff. I don't think so. But in response to your last question, yes, of course, I would love to see them make more. I would love to see them use Paramount Plus as a launching pad for all kinds of wacky, different kinds of Star Trek stuff, be it new shows or standalone movies. I would love to see them start to experiment a little with Star Trek in sort of the way, and I mean, experiment is maybe overstating it a bit, but doing the kinds of things that recently Disney has done with the Disney Plus streaming shows for Star Wars, where, and I haven't liked all of it. I was not nearly as enamored of Andor as a lot of people, but I appreciate the fact that it exists and that they were trying to do something different. I liked The Acolyte. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And I did absolutely adore Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew, I thought, was the best Star Wars thing I've seen since The Last Jedi was in theaters. Like, I loved Skeleton Crew. I don't know, maybe first season of Mandalorian was a little better than Skeleton Crew. It's hard to tell, but Skeleton Crew was wonderful. I loved it. And I would love to see Paramount use Paramount Plus to kind of do different stuff under the Star Trek umbrella, stuff that isn't so tightly lashed to nostalgia and, you know, legacy characters and stuff, and maybe use this idea of, oh, we can do a 90-minute, you know, streaming only movie to play with some of these ideas and to give writers and directors maybe who have never worked in the franchise before a chance to tell their stories. Like, I don't expect that to happen, but that would be really cool. I would really, really love to see that. David Colby, whose actor cannot return for this episode, is going to die in a horrific shuttle crash. How the fuck did Robert Picard die? I know he rejected modern technology. I mean, not enough to not live on a planet with a global weather control system, point-to-point transporter grid, or fusion power plants that I presume provided some, if not all, of the electricity for his home. But okay, say he has a primitive reactor that provides the juice. Did that cause the fire? If so, how the flying fuck did he and Renee die so quickly that they couldn't be spotted and beamed out by the, again, global point-to-point transportation grid? Any number of weather sats would have noticed and alerted the authorities that, hey, the Picard vineyard is hot and smoking. It would have taken a few seconds to beam them to a hospital. How did they die, Steve? Did Picard plan this? Was Jack Crusher not enough? Did the urge grow inside of him day by day as he sat on that bridge thinking about Robert and his smug face and that little boy of his? Did Picard think, oh yeah, I'll show them? I was going to accuse you of overthinking it, but then you completely redeemed it at the end there with the Picard plotted to murder his brother and nephew out of resentment. I am going to just go ahead and assume from this point forward that that is exactly what happened. Nicely done. Debbie, this time I do have a question for you. On December 22nd, my youngest daughter passed away in her sleep. She was only 42, and we still do not know what happened yet. We are waiting on the autopsy report. My oldest grandson is an atheist. He was a little upset my daughter, which is his aunt, was cremated, and I was given some ashes of her. I explained to him she was married, and in the state of Texas, her husband can only make that call. By law, her parents could not say anything about her cremation. So is cremation against the beliefs of an atheist? Well, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about this. My sincerest condolences for your loss. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. Well, the thing is, there is no standard set of beliefs for an atheist. Atheism is a very diverse group. Lots of atheists believe or don't believe all kinds of things. So no, there is nothing about cremation that is necessarily against the beliefs of atheists. Now, there may be individual atheists, like your grandson, who object to cremation for any number of reasons that may have something to do with their atheism or may have nothing to do with it whatsoever. I'm not sure what his, what his feelings about cremation are and why he would have a problem with it, whether he has a problem with it in principle or he only has a problem with it in this case because it was someone who was related to him. I don't know what he's thinking and where his head is at, but no, there is no reason why an atheist would necessarily object to cremation. There are no standard atheist doctrines that all or even most atheists adhere to. The only thing you need to have as a characteristic in order to be considered an atheist, and it's something you don't have, which is a lack of belief in the existence of gods. Like if you believe that gods do not exist, then that makes you an atheist by definition. Now, some people who meet that definition still choose not to call themselves atheists. They might not claim that label. They might call themselves something else, or they might not call themselves anything. It might not be that important to them, and they just don't define themselves by their lack of belief in gods at all. But that's the defining characteristic, is not believing in gods. So anything in addition to that is very much on a case-by-case basis. So I can't speak for your grandson as to why he was upset by the cremation or if it had anything to do with his atheism or not. But once again, I'm very, very, very sorry to hear that. That's terrible. I hope that you and your family are doing okay considering. Everyone eats dinner in a private vaulted ceiling dining room adorned with an ornate chandelier. In the middle of said room sits a darkly stained, heavy grand oak dining table with 12 large matching chairs, 6 chairs directly facing each other from the table. As they sit, all in their prime, eating steak, baked potatoes, pork chops, and baked beans, each is also consuming a moderate amount of any number of different libations. On one side of the table sits President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and President Barack Obama. On the other side sits President Abraham Lincoln, President Richard Milhouse Nixon, and President Ronald Wilson Reagan, plus their wives. Steve, what's the reaction to their opposites? What problems do they solve? What beliefs about each other change because of this dinner? I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Lincoln and Kennedy and Roosevelt might just decide collectively that it wasn't worth it. That modern America was not worth whatever sacrifices they made to help bring it about. They might be like, I think especially Lincoln and Kennedy, since they were assassinated, might be like, oh man, we took bullets for this. Seriously? Reagan was president? This fucking Nixon asshole? Seriously? I mean, I would like to think that maybe Lincoln would be happy to see Obama, that, you know, Lincoln had progressed to the point at the very end of his life that he had accepted not just the need for freedom for Black Americans from slavery, but also had accepted that they should be regarded as equals to whites, which was a long road for Lincoln. And it's somewhat debatable whether he ever quite got to that point before he died, to the point where he not only rejected slavery and wanted to end it and free Black people, but also actually regarded them as equals to white people and that they deserved completely equal standing in society. There's evidence to suggest that he had reached that point, but it's hard to tell. But I would like to think that Lincoln would be happy to see that Obama, a Black man, had been elected president. But who knows? What problems would they solve? I don't think they would solve any problems. I think their frames of reference, especially for, you know, the ones from many, many decades past, like Roosevelt and Kennedy and Lincoln, and even Nixon. I mean, Nixon was a while ago now. I think their frames of reference are so different from each other. I'm not sure what they could actually solve together. Maybe they just have big arguments. That's what I would hope for. Farah Grimm, if you could change one thing regarding the TV show Enterprise that you feel would improve it significantly, what would you change? Theme song doesn't count. Well, and obviously, I mean, changing the theme song wouldn't affect the quality of the show in any noticeable way anyhow. And if I was going to change the theme song, I'd probably pick just a better pop song. Like, I love the idea of a Star Trek show having a pop song as a theme and not doing an instrumental theme. I think that's a wonderful idea in concept. I just don't really think they picked the song from Patch Adams. You know what would be a really good opening theme for our new Star Trek prequel? The song from the end credits of Patch Adams. I'm still not sure what the decision-making process was for that. I would get rid of the temporal Cold War stuff. If I could choose one thing to change about Enterprise, I would just completely eliminate the temporal Cold War. That would not be a storyline in it at all. It just would not exist. And I would focus on 22nd century humanity taking its first big step of exploration into the galaxy. And I would make that show instead of intertwining it with a bunch of, you know, time travel stuff and 29th century stuff. That to me was a distraction and a waste of time and was never the most interesting part of that show. Rusty Ronan, well, I've been a patron for almost a year now, and I have yet to submit a question. So before I procrastinate again, here it goes. Steve, are you a Cormac McCarthy fan? I am not a well-read person, and the only reason I know about Mr. McCarthy is because of the Coen brothers. So far, I have read No Country for Old Men and The Road, and I am absolutely blown away by this man. I got a copy of Blood Meridian during the holidays, but I have yet to start reading it. I would love to know what's your opinion of this great American author, because I consider you a great writer yourself. Love all that you do. Thank you. To my everlasting shame, hopefully not everlasting, hopefully I will correct it at some point, but no, I have never actually read any of Cormac McCarthy's work. I know his stories through their adaptations because I've seen films that were made from his work, but I've never actually read a Cormac McCarthy novel. Now, what I know about him otherwise, what I know about the kind of person he was and his sort of writing style, I expect that I will enjoy his work when I do finally get around to reading some of it. I mean, it would be very surprising to me if I finally sat down to read a Cormac McCarthy book and I got a few pages into it and thought, this sucks. Like, I'm not expecting that. But I have never actually read a Cormac McCarthy novel, so I can't say. But, you know, the films that I have seen, specifically No Country for Old Men, is probably top of the list. It's one of my favorite films of the last 25 years, at least. I mean, it's a brilliant film. That, and also I've never seen the film of Blood Meridian, believe it or not. But The Road also was made into a very good film. Not to the level of No Country for me, but still a very, very good film. So, but no, I have not actually read Cormac McCarthy. I need to remedy that situation at some point. I'm glad you're reading it, and I'm glad you enjoy it. Carlisle the Cinephile. Hey, Steve, I've been hunting for a new job for several reasons lately. Chief among them is the fact that my workplace is full of Trump supporters, and I really don't feel safe there. On election day, I had one coworker who I know is a Trump supporter come up to me and say, "You made the right choice, right?" Since the election, they've been increasingly emboldened with the awful things they've been saying. I've begun to legitimately fear for my safety with some of them because a lot of them have tempers and a lot of them can get belligerent with little provocation. But I wonder if it's cowardly of me to leave when I could stay and advocate for the people who will most likely be harmed by this new administration. My attempts to do so have fallen on deaf ears so far, but I still feel compelled to try. Am I wrong for wanting to get out of this place? No, absolutely not. Get out. Get out. Keep looking for a new job, and as soon as you find something that looks good, get out. Fuck that place and fuck those people. You're not Superman. It's not your job to fix everybody. It's not your job to try and make that place a better place to work, especially if it seems like it's such a fool's errand, like you'll be sort of pissing into the wind. I mean, how much good do you think you could possibly do? No, look, not just for your own safety and your own peace of mind, but for your own overall long-term quality of life. We live but once. We have one life. And you should not waste it, and you should not make it any more difficult on yourself than you have to. Now, there are other ways that you can try to push back against this administration, that you can try to do good and put positive things out into the world and help people who are going to be affected by this administration. And you should absolutely do those things. But I don't think you need to put yourself in that kind of a situation on a daily basis at your job where you're being paid, and theoretically you should not be putting more into it and putting yourself more at risk than you are being compensated for. That to me is not acceptable. And if you have already made the decision that you're going to be looking for other places to work, I think you should stick with that and continue to pursue that. I think that sounds like a good idea. And don't feel bad about getting out of there. Like, especially if people are coming up to you at election time and saying, did you do the right thing? You made the right choice, right? Fuck that guy. Fuck whoever said that to you. And I don't blame you at all for not wanting to work with that person or people like that anymore. Some random geek who has just realized something. Uh-oh. Wait, Steve, are you telling me that because I'm a member of your YouTube channel and a patron of your Patreon, I can submit 2 questions for Ask Away? So I could combine my questions into one 2,000 character mini essay disguised as a question, which was part of my reason to ask you this question, to challenge you and your audience on your views on politics in my attempt to radicalize more people to be anarchists, or at least stop being pro-capitalism in any form. But I don't think you want that either. Plus, if everyone who's a member and a patron asks you 2 questions a week, you'll be answering questions for 2 hours and then do 30 minutes of hanging out in the live chat. I bet you want to keep your semi-weekly askaways to just 2 hours if you can help it. So I guess I could keep one 1,000 character form to just be my question and the other to remind folks of charitylinks.page, especially since that will become more important now and forever. Can I just say, I like that second plan. If you do choose, because yeah, you look, I said already, you are one of the few that I very much appreciate and have never asked for, but you are both a paying patron and a channel member. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're paying me twice, if you want, you can ask 2 questions for Askaway. So you're entitled to do that. And I'm not going to complain, but yes, I do like the idea of, if you want to do that, use one post for your actual question and use another to push the charity links and such, because I agree those are important, and I also enjoy pushing those out to people because I think hopefully it helps. But yeah, I would again, as long as you're chipping in your patronage and your membership, it's sort of up to you. I mean, you have that 1,000 character limit to do with whatever you do with it, and as long as it's not something too morally egregious, I'll put it on the show. But I like the idea of asking a question and then using the other one to promote the links. But that's just my suggestion or my position on the matter. Anyway, some random geek. Second question, if Steve allows it, I will allow it. Michael Brown, shot and killed by Darren Wilson of the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department. Brown was shot and killed while he had his hands up, according to witnesses' statements. This, along with the killing of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, and Rekia Boyd, started the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I had conversations with a certain liberal, hashtag not all liberals, who said to me, oh, Michael Brown, according to the police reports, he was reaching for the cop's gun. He wasn't murdered. It was self-defense. This one liberal even clarified, if a cop is in danger in any way, they have every right to use whatever means necessary to put down the threat. So all a cop has to say in an official statement about why they discharge their weapon is, I was afraid for my life. I didn't react kindly to those statements. I hate many pro-cop statements and attitudes. What are your thoughts on these statements? I mean, this is an area where you and I, even though we differ on a lot of political stuff, this is an area where you and I agree pretty much 100%. I am not, I mean, look, I acknowledge that being a police officer can be a very dangerous profession. But what I object to is the characterizing of being a cop as somehow uniquely dangerous or more dangerous than any other profession. Because there are lots of professions that people choose to do, right? Nobody forces anybody to be a cop. There are lots of professions, including police officer, that lots of people choose to do that are very dangerous. And while, yes, of course, it is reasonable to expect that a person doing a dangerous job will take certain measures and will act in certain ways to protect themselves from those dangers, you also kind of, you have to draw a line somewhere. And you can't allow, well, I was afraid for my life to be a catch-all excuse for any kind of behavior. And unfortunately, with cops and the unacceptably high rate of police killing civilians for at least questionable, if not utterly unjustifiable reasons, like that has become the catch-all excuse. He reached for my gun, or I thought he had a gun. You know, it was back in the 90s in New York City, Amadou Diallo was shot dozens of times by New York City police officers because he was reaching for something. I thought he had a gun. I thought I saw a gun. Right? It's kind of an unfalsifiable statement. Like, how can you prove that the cop didn't sincerely think he saw a gun? That's an excuse. If you accept that as an excuse, you have just handed every cop in America a foolproof excuse for killing anybody he wants to kill for any reason. I thought they had a gun. How can he, even if it turns out they don't have a gun, the standard isn't they had a gun. The standard is the cop who shot them thought they had a gun. And how can you prove that the cop didn't think that? So it's a ridiculous standard. There does need to be some allowance for a police officer acting to protect their own safety, or to protect the safety of a fellow officer, or to protect the safety of civilians in the area, right? But the standard cannot be this unfalsifiable claim of, well, I shot him because I thought he had a gun. We need to do way better than that. And we need to start actually holding police officers to higher standards than we hold civilians, because it's flipped. You know, we expect civilians to do every single thing right in interactions with the cops. And even then, sometimes it's not enough and they still get shot. And sometimes they still get killed, or at the very least subjected to excessive force from a police officer. We expect civilians, citizens, the people that the cops are supposed to be protecting, to have to do every single thing right. And a cop can fuck up all day long, as long as he can say, I thought that my life was in danger. We really need to flip that around. Mike the Humble. Steve, you're best. You're the best in my opinion. Sorry about last time. Your fanboys and girls are hard to take in fast chat. The worship group. Not your fault. You don't encourage it. You're bright, funny, but not godlike. Sure you agree. Not your area of expertise. I have a question, a good one, but we'll save it. I'm in the penalty box this week. Promise I won't fight if you let me back out on the ice next week. Keep doing what you do. Turning water into wine is an important job, even if you work in the supermarket. TC, I shall return. Okay, Mike, I have no idea what you're talking about. If you were banned from the chat last time, I didn't see it, and I don't know what it was about. You must have done something that one of my moderators felt warranted kicking you out. So I will defer to the judgment of whoever kicked you out, because I trust, if I make someone a moderator, it means that I trust their judgment to do that. And they know that I don't like any kind of horse shit going on in the chat. And if they didn't know you and they got a whiff that you were someone who was making trouble, they probably kicked you out. So I don't know. I didn't see the situation. If you're asking to be reinstated, I mean, I'm willing to do that, but you have to get in contact with me privately, because I don't know what your YouTube handle is. I don't know, like, I don't have the necessary information to unban you from the chat. So if that's something you want, you'll have to message me on, send me a private message on Patreon, or email me or something, and we can figure that out. But by all means, whether that happens by next time or not, please ask me your question next time. I would love to answer your question. Max. Hey, Steve, hope you're doing okay. Have you ever had to deal with thoughts of suicidal ideation? I've had them since late adolescence on, decades now. If not, congratulations. If so, what strategies have you developed for dealing with them? I am very fortunate that I have never had those thoughts. I have never seriously contemplated or had, like, intrusive thoughts or morbid fascinations with suicide. Quite the opposite. I am so terrified of death, and so not looking forward to my own death, that it is unfathomable to me that I would ever hasten it by taking my own life. And I consider myself very fortunate for that, because I know, as you unfortunately know from experience, there are a lot of people who deal with that, and it's a very serious issue, and it affects your quality of life, even if you never act on those thoughts. It's still something that you have to contend with on a regular basis, and it sounds absolutely awful. So I wish you good luck in dealing with it, continuing to deal with it. But no, I do not. I mean, the main thing that I do whenever I have any kind of depressive episode, which again, I say that in a general way. I don't have depression. I've never experienced any kind of serious, like, diagnosed clinical depression. But if occasionally I'm upset about something or worried about something, or, this doesn't happen as often as it used to, but even if the old fear of death comes creeping in, I used to have these moods when I was a child, especially, but lasting up until today, just not nearly as frequently, where I would get this sudden rush of just awareness that I was going to die someday, a terrible, inescapable awareness of my own mortality, that one day this all will end, and I will no longer exist as a consciousness, right? And, being an atheist, I don't believe that there's an afterlife. So I assume that'll be it. I'd love to be wrong about that, but I assume that that'll be it. And that is an incredibly upsetting thought. And sometimes it just comes over me and just grabs a hold of me. And the way I deal with that is I think about something else. Like, I don't know how else to deal with it. I think about something else. I find something else to do. I find something to distract me, and eventually it goes away. And that's kind of how I've always dealt with it. I don't know. Nothing else has ever really worked. I don't know if that works for suicidal ideation, because again, I've never actually had to deal with that, but that's how I deal with the closest equivalent to that I can describe from my own experience. Big Steve P. Hey, Steve, what's your favorite part of your job? Writing, recording, any specific video types that are your favorite? Also, you do a lot of fan interaction and you seem to like it. Do you have a favorite type of fan interactions? Askaways, hangouts, etc. Thank you. I hate it. I hate all the fan interactions. No, I mean, I like doing this. I like Askaways. I like, because it gives me a chance to talk about a lot of stuff that I don't usually talk about, and it's live and it's off the cuff, and there's a live chat that I get to interact with, and I love talking to the people that come to these live streams. So I mean, I really enjoy the Askaways. The monthly hangouts are great too, because that's actually in person, or not, over a Zoom, but still, like, you're actually talking to other people live and in the moment on video. And that's awesome. It would be a little better if we could stop talking over each other so much and interrupting each other. Because whenever I have to, like, sort of start moderating, I feel like I'm having to be a teacher or something, and that's not the job I want. But other than that, those are a wonderful thing as well. My favorite part of making videos, probably, I mean, it depends on each video, because each phase of the production process has its ups and downs and has things about it that I love and things about it that I just kind of get through, There's a quote about writing that it's frequently been attributed to Dorothy Parker, but I think actually Frank Norris originated it. But it's I don't like writing, but I like having written. And that doesn't describe my feelings about my video making process exactly, because I don't hate it. I love parts of it. But I really like having a finished video at the end. Like, that's my favorite part, when it's done and I can look at it and say, okay, I've watched it. I didn't fuck anything up. It came out the way I hoped it would. It matches more or less the idea that I had in my head for it. And now I can show it to people and hopefully they'll like it, right? And if a bunch of people watch it and I make some money off of it, even better. But before that, it's probably the writing more than anything else, as long as the writing goes good. Sometimes the writing is difficult and frustrating, and then it's not fun. But in general, if the writing goes good, I think the writing is my favorite part, because even though every step of the way is creative, like, getting in front of the camera and recording is creative, and I love being in front of the camera. I'm a ham. I love acting. I love reading the words that I wrote. I love doing my video essayist thing. I love being in front of the camera and doing that part of it. Again, as long as it's going good. If I'm fucking up my lines a lot and I'm having to go back and fix things, or I'm having trouble, getting the words out, then it's not fun at all. But if it's going smoothly, it's a lot of fun. And that is creative, as is the editing, as is everything. But the writing is the most purely creative part, because that's the part where you're conjuring something out of nothing. That's the part where you start with a blank page and you make it up. And then everything else that you do creatively pivots off of that. So the writing is the original act of creativity. And like I said, when that is going good, I think that's my favorite part. And I still think of myself more as a writer than as anything else that is involved in the process. Agent Meister, 17th Earl of Shrewsbury. Peldor Joy, Steve, and pray sit with me a while, for I have matters on which I would become your counsel. Captain America, has been a character I've loved for most of the last 35 years, and I'm sort of looking forward to the new movie. My problem is that I have not watched a single second of the MCU since Endgame. I had hoped to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier by now, but I just haven't had the time. I would love to think that the new Cap movie is a self-contained entity with a beginning, middle, and end, and I won't have to have watched hours of material that came up before to catch me up, and that I won't have to watch hours of material that will come out after in order to get a resolution to important plot points. But who am I kidding? So I was hoping you could give an abbreviated digest of the life and times of Sam Wilson up to now. And if you have time, give me your thoughts on the post-Endgame MCU compared to pre-Endgame. Based on the reviews, it's fair to say that the latter is inferior to the former. Well, I mean, there's really not, in terms of Sam, I mean, he got the shield from Steve before Steve went back to the place where he had gone, to live out his retirement. And in the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV series, eventually Sam becomes Captain America. I mean, and he accepts his role as Captain America, and he sort of works through his ambivalence of being a black man in America, but also taking on that symbol as Captain America and sort of making it clear to us in the audience through the story, and also to other people in the story, that him being Captain America is not him endorsing everything that America stands for or everything that the American government does. Him being Captain America is him fighting for the America that he thinks we should be, and trying to achieve the ideals that we as Americans say we want, in terms of, justice and fairness and peace and, all that stuff. So that's kind of where and it's not that different from what Steve Rogers was doing either. In terms of their approach to being Cap, it's very much the same. It's just, it's in a different context with Sam, because he is a black man in the United States in this day and age. And, it's just, it sheds a whole different light on things. But that's basically Sam's. I mean, you don't really need to go through the plot of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There is a guy who was officially made Captain America before Sam, and then he was sort of deposed when Sam became Captain America, and I believe he will be in the new movie as well. At least in some degree. But I expect the new movie, even though I'm sure it will make reference to previous events, I expect the story of the movie to be more or less self-contained. I think Marvel gets a bad rap as far as that's concerned. Most Marvel movies, even the ones that do have like a lot of setups for other movies and a lot of connections to other stuff, the main stories of most Marvel movies are fairly well self-contained and include enough reminders and exposition and so forth, so that you can watch it and you know what's going on, even if you didn't watch the previous 5 movies or the streaming show or whatever. So, I mean, I'm sure if you do get a chance to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier before you see the new movie, it will enhance your understanding of it. But I don't think it's going to be necessary. I don't think you'll be completely lost if you haven't watched it. And as for post-Endgame MCU, I mean, look, it's been up and down. I am not as negative on it as a lot of people are. I think we just need to accept that the build-up to Infinity War and Endgame was probably a one-time deal, or at least it's going to feel like a one-time deal because it was the first time that sort of thing had happened on that scale. That was the payoff to the entire Marvel universe for like 10 years. And now, Marvel is trying to build back up to something else, another big climax like that. And it remains to be seen whether it's going to compare favorably to Infinity War and Endgame or not. But even if it is good, like it'll be the second thing. So that's sort of the phase that Marvel is in. I think a lot of the post Endgame stuff has been excellent. And some of it has been not that great or kind of forgettable. I really don't think any of it has been awful. Like even the Eternals, which I didn't think was outstanding, and just felt very samey. It felt similar to other things that the MCU was doing at the same time, and I just felt like, okay, why do we need this specifically? This doesn't set itself apart enough from the other stuff to feel like we needed to see this. But even that I didn't think was awful. You know, it's nothing that I would rush to watch again, but it wasn't like I didn't get to the end of the movie and think, what the fuck was that? What a waste of time, you know? So I mean, I don't think that the post-Endgame stuff quite lives up to the highest points of the build-up to Endgame, but at the same time, I don't think that makes it bad. A lot of it has been very good. Danny K. Hi, Steve. I'm a regular at certain drinking establishments around town, so I am frequently overhearing morons attempt to discuss politics. The latest gem I heard was that what we're seeing now with the rise of fascism in America, particularly among young white men, is due to the fact that the left isn't cool anymore and went too far. They didn't give any examples of this because they were in full agreement with each other, but I still couldn't help but ponder. First, who is the left in this case? Second, what is cool about the right that the left is lacking in not doing? Third, what has the left done to go too far, considering that they are about as relevant in U.S. politics as the Free Soil Party these days? Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Hope all is well. That is all the product of right-wing narratives taking control of the popular discourse. None of that is true. I don't know if the left, especially the far left, was ever cool. I mean, there was a time, and hopefully there will be a time again before too long, where leftist politics were more popular with young people, and younger people were more far to the left in their political thinking, and maybe it was regarded as cool because of that, because coolness kind of comes from youth culture and is always reinterpreted and rejuvenated by young people. So if leftism was especially popular among certain groups of young people, it might have seemed cool because of that. But I don't think leftist politics, and this isn't a knock against leftist politics, but I don't think leftist politics has ever been regarded as cool. And no, and nor did the left go too far. For one thing, the actual like far left hasn't had any significant political influence for a long time. What is called the far left in the government, which is the sort of left-leaning Democratic Party, and people on the left would say even calling it left-leaning is going too far, but I think it's at least fair to call it left-leaning, even if the lean is just barely. But no, they haven't gone too far. The reason why people are saying, because they're like, what's an example of the left going too far? I can't think of one. And the kinds of things that people who say that might say, they'll say like, oh, DEI. What went too far about DEI? Do you even know what DEI is? Oh, trans agenda. What does that mean? Recognizing that trans people exist? Saying that they should have rights? That they should be respected? That they should be able to access medical care if they need it or want it? That their identities should be acknowledged? That trans women should be treated as women and trans men should be treated as men and non-binary people should be treated as non-binary people? Like, is that going too far? For some people it is, but that's their problem. I don't think it's the left making any kind of overstep, but that's because the far right has taken over the narrative. And this is not a recent phenomenon. The far right took over the narrative in this country a long time ago. And it's their talking points and their narratives and their prejudices and bigotries and alarmist concepts and fears and what have you. Like that is what people are responding to. And that is what people who aren't particularly fluent in politics are regurgitating. And I know something about this because I will go into more detail of it in answering an upcoming question here. But no, it's not the fault of the left. It's the fault of the right being allowed to control the narrative too much. JDC is not feeling the optimism. Hey, Steve, I hope you're doing as well as can be expected in the shiny new hellscape. Ignoring that for a minute, we recently saw our second Star Trek movie that started life as a series. Are you familiar with other examples where a project started as a series but ended up as a movie? Maybe even one that did it well. Thanks, and let's see what they make next, if there is a next. Well, that's right, because Star Trek the Motion Picture began development as a series and then eventually became a movie. And same thing happened to Section 31. Although I don't think history will be quite as kind to Section 31. The best example I can think of a movie that began development as a TV series, because I think that's what you're asking. You're not talking about like movies that were based on TV shows that actually were produced. You're talking about a movie that was made as a movie, but when they first started working on it, they thought it was going to be a TV series instead. Mulholland Drive, directed by the unfortunately late, the recently deceased master director, brilliant David Lynch. And some people think that Mulholland Drive is David Lynch's best film. And I might agree. I don't know. I mean, I love Mulholland Drive, but I love a lot of David Lynch stuff. But Mulholland Drive was started as a TV series. It was supposed to be a TV series, and the script that they eventually shot, that was Mulholland Drive, started out as the script for the pilot of a TV series. And then when they realized this isn't going to be a show, this is going to be a movie, then they reworked it and, made some changes to it. Although I think you can still see little traces of, things that were there because they thought it was going to be a TV show if you watch the movie. At least it seems to play that way. I don't know. But yeah, Mulholland Drive, I think, is the best example, because that was supposed to be, David Lynch was going to do another TV series, another Twin Peaks, but I think probably even more Lynchy, judging by what we do have of Mulholland Drive. And it didn't happen, and instead we got an absolute masterpiece of a film. So I'm happy with that. But yeah, that's the example I think of. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I've been pestering you with trolley problems recently, and I recognize that these can be emotionally taxing, so I'll give you an easy one this time. You are at the switch of the trolley system when a runaway trolley rushes down the track. There is nobody on either the main or side track since it's early Sunday morning, and besides, downtown isn't what it used to be since the big box stores went up in the suburbs. A shame, really. Anyhow, your favorite mom and pop diner is about to open, and you have a powerful hankering for an old-fashioned breakfast and a hot cup of joe. What can we get you, hun? Sugar or cream for your coffee? Need a refill? Also, do you order a side order of hotcakes for later? Wink. See you in hell. I drink my coffee black, so no cream or sugar at all, please. This isn't coffee. This is iced tea. But if this was coffee, this would be as black as a banker's heart. What's my standard diner breakfast? 2 eggs over medium, bacon, 2 slices of toast, wheat toast if you have it. If not, white toast is fine. And that's usually enough for me. Maybe sausage if they also have sausage. I'll have bacon and sausage at the same time. I don't fucking care. Home fries or hash browns. If I get pancakes or hotcakes, that's usually my breakfast. Like I'll get like that. It's if I'm getting like eggs and bacon and toast, then I usually don't get hotcakes. If I get hotcakes, then it's hotcakes and maybe some bacon on the side and toast, but no eggs and, nothing too filling besides the hotcakes, or the pancakes as we called them in my house. And no, I don't order a side order of hotcakes for later. I'm not a glutton, Stephen. Brian McKinley. Hey, Steve. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for doing these askaways. Between things like this, your hangouts, and all the thoughtful content you put out, you definitely give us patrons and channel members value for our money. I do a weekly 1-hour podcast with a friend, and that's enough for me. I can only imagine the amount of work you put in every week. Anyway, my question is Superman related. Did you ever watch Smallville? I can't remember you mentioning it. I'm not the biggest Superman fan, but I liked that show's version of Clark Kent, and I think Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor is the best version of that character to date. Oh yeah, I watched Smallville religiously for about maybe the first 5 or 6 seasons. I did drop off eventually, because I think they ended up doing like 9 seasons, didn't they? 9 or 10 seasons. And so I left. I stopped. I just kind of lost interest after about season 5 or season 6. But from about season 2 until maybe season 4 or 5, I thought it was a fantastic show. It really found a groove there for a few years where it was just can't miss, right? Um, and I agree with you about Michael Rosenbaum's Lex. He was the best part of the show. His Lex was fantastic. And when they really found the magic of the Clark and Lex friendship and made me believe that Clark and Lex were really friends, but they also kept reminding you of like the Greek tragedy of it all, like reminding you that these two are destined to be bitter enemies at some point in the future. Like that was so good. The show really did a great job with that, you know, because it made it feel so tragic because it's like, oh, they're such good friends. They really seem like they like each other and they have like a really good dynamic. And yet there's all this foreshadowing of, and of course, I mean, you kind of assume anyway, if you go in knowing that Superman and Lex Luthor are arch enemies in the comics, you sort of just assume that's how it's going to go on the show eventually. But the show was well written enough to realize that just that pre-existing awareness out in the culture wasn't enough. So they put in foreshadowing in the show. Not super, I mean, sometimes it was a little over the top, but usually it wasn't like super ham-fisted and beating you over the head with it. It was just enough to remind you, don't forget, they're going to hate each other eventually. You know, Lex is going to try to kill him eventually. That it was just so good. So yeah, for the time I was watching it, I was a big fan of Smallville. Yeah, and I am a big fan of Michael Rosenbaum's Lex. I agree. He was fantastic. I don't know if I would quite go far as saying he's the best version, because there have been some very excellent Lexes. But his, I mean, top 2 or 3 easily. Like he's fantastic as Lex. Air One Fire, who loves the metric system so much he chopped off his feet. I admire the dedication. Hi, Steve. I'm thinking of starting a few anonymous progressive political accounts on Blue Sky and maybe elsewhere. I think I could have a fairly unique voice and want to use it. What are the pros and cons of trying that? Best wishes. I mean, the con would just be the amount of, the pros, I suppose, would be that you, as long as you do protect your anonymity and nobody finds out who you really are and can't trace anything you say back to you, you do have a certain amount of freedom. You can say things that you won't have to worry about, oh, this is going to get me fired, or this is going to piss off my friends or my relatives, or whatever. Like you'll have a little bit more room to express yourself and to advocate for things that might be controversial. The con is just the extra work, keeping it straight. You know, like if you have 2 or 3 different accounts that you're using for different things and you want to keep them separate, to me, that seems like a lot of work. You know, that's why I'm just myself everywhere, you know. But that's the biggest con for me is like, oh, especially if you have like a Blue Sky account that is you, where people know it's you. And then you have another one where it's also you, but you don't want people to know it's you, and having to keep those straight and remember to keep them separate and not post something when you're accidentally logged on as the other one. Like, yeah, that to me seems like the biggest con. MW Ridro, woof, first ask away under 47. It's been 11 days and it feels like 11 years. Not even sure which bullshit to talk about. It's just been a fire hose of shit in my face every time I dare to peek my head out and see what's going on. And I know that's the point. I will say that the POTUS news conference yesterday about the airplane crash made my stomach turn. 68 people dead, and these ghouls are blaming it on fucking DEI. Can you imagine losing a loved one like that? And then you hear POTUS using the opportunity to talk about how diversity hires just aren't smart enough to work air traffic control. 1,450 days of Trump left. Yeah, I mean, it's gross, it's disgusting, it's reprehensible, and it's what we have to deal with for the next 4 years. And I wish there was something I could say to take the edge off of it, but there's really not. I mean, you are right, though. The fire hose of bullshit is the point. There's a Facebook friend of mine who described it as the Gish Gallop presidency. And I don't know if she came up with that herself. If she did, that's fucking brilliant. Or if she heard it from someone else, but she's the first person that I heard it from. And she messaged me and said something about it. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, that's the perfect way to describe Donald Trump as president. It's the Gish Gallop. presidency. You know, you barely have time to respond to all the horse shit that he just said, and he's already said 15 new things, or done 15 new things, or threatened to do 15 new. I mean, that's the point, to overwhelm you. And that's how Trump has gotten away with so much of what he's gotten away with. He does and says so many reprehensible things with such frequency and such shamelessness that how can you stop and pick out individual things to try and do something about? Like it's not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. And that is, I think, by design. So yeah, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. I believe that, but it's going to be a long 4 years, and we're going to have to, we're going to have to screw our heads on. For sure. Glenn H. Hey, Steve, I keep missing the deadlines to submit to your patron questions. I should write these down in advance and get my money's worth. I wanted to ask you more about your young Republican days that you have often referenced. I too had one of those phases, probably as a teenage rebellion against my very traditional Democrat parents. But I eventually grew out of that phase because I found myself always having to assert my opinions, which became exhausting. When I finally just shut up and listened to other people and their perspectives, my stance softened significantly, and I found myself more middle of the road politically these days. Can you discuss what caused you to outgrow your early ditto head? Yes, youngins, that's what we called ourselves, days, and take such a strong 180 shift in your political viewpoint. I look forward to hearing your response when I watch your Ask Away tomorrow. Thanks for all the work you do. Well, hi, watching this tomorrow, Glenn. This is the question I was alluding to earlier when I said I know something about like the political, why conservatism is considered cool or whatever. Because my young Republican phase ended because I realized that being a Republican, being a conservative, being a Rush Limbaugh acolyte was irreconcilable with values that I had always had, right? Republicans and conservatives more generally are just fundamentally opposed, or at best don't care about or don't see the importance of things that I have cared about and have thought was important for as long as I can remember. I didn't all of a sudden just decide when I was a young adult that I thought racism was bad and I cared about racial equality. I've always felt that way since I was a kid, for as long as I can remember. I've always been uncomfortable with racism. Now, I can't lie and say that I've never spoken in a racist way, or I've never said a racist joke or ever laughed at a racist joke. I mean, I am still a white person from Western Maryland, and I wish it was not true. But, when I was younger and a little more suggestible, I would laugh at racist jokes with my friends, or adults in my life who would tell them and use racist language when I spoke. But even with that, even in those days, there was still, I still felt like discrimination against people on the basis of race was bad. And if you really believe that, and you really believe that we should be trying to avoid and eliminate and correct for racial bias and racism, like that's irreconcilable with a conservative viewpoint, because even though conservatives sometimes will pretend that they also don't like racism, that's not really true, is it? They say that, but that's not really true. So if you actually care about being anti-racist and want to do your best to live that out, that is incompatible with being a conservative. And I realized that eventually. Just like I realized that it's incompatible with conservatism to be an environmentalist and to care about the natural world and to be willing to put what is good for the environment ahead of what is profitable in the short term, which again is something that is completely anathema to a conservative. Conservatives are profit driven, and if it can make money and if it's good for the economy, et cetera, then it's more important than stopping global warming or preserving an endangered species or whatever, right? I just realized that was incompatible with being a conservative. I have loved the space program for as long as I can remember. And what group of people wants to kill the space program more? I should specify the public space program, the government space program, than Republicans, because of course they love private space flight because they can get rich off of that. They love to throw as much money at Elon Musk's fucking rocket company as they can. They just don't want to give any to NASA. So that's incompatible with being a conservative. So I just realized eventually as I got older that there were things that were really important to me, that always had been important to me, that just did not fit with a conservative worldview. So I moved beyond, I grew up and I jettisoned that conservative worldview because I realized that that was not me. And that's not who I wanted to be. That's not the kind of person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be better than that. And how did I get there in the first place? Essentially, I was radicalized. I started thinking of myself as a conservative, as a young Republican in my early teens and 13 years old, something like that. Because at that time, that was when Rush Limbaugh really hit the crest of his popularity, when his radio show was just everywhere. And he had a TV show. He had a nightly TV show that was syndicated. And I started watching that. And he wrote books that were like best-selling New York Times #1 books. And I read those books. And there was just a lot of Rush Limbaugh stuff and a lot of, sort of pop conservatism in the culture. And I was a kid who didn't know any better. And I was susceptible to it. And I was persuaded by it for a time. And it was just it was convenient and it was attractive because it was people who spoke with confidence, like they knew what they were talking about. And if you could talk like they talked, then you would sound like you knew what you were talking about too. And that was appealing to someone like me who wanted to be thought of as smart and wanted to be thought of as informed and intelligent and clever and thoughtful and philosophical, but hadn't actually put in any of the work necessary to really be any of those things. But I had an excuse because I was a fucking kid. We have people today that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who are still doing that same thing that I was doing when I was a kid, who are pretending to be smart, pretending to be thoughtful and philosophical, but they haven't actually done any of the work to really be those things. They're just parroting stuff that they've heard other people say, and the people that they heard it from probably didn't know what the fuck they were talking about either. So that's, in a relatively short form, that's the story of how I got to be a young Republican and how I eventually, thankfully, grew out of it. A long-haired, freaky person who rarely puts her hair up under a hat. This is Dana, by the way, everybody. And the sign said, long-haired, freaky people need not apply. I like that song. I've always liked that song. Even when I was a young Republican, I liked that song. Maybe another sign that was just never my destiny. Happy Friday, Steve. Today was a pretty good day. The students in the elective class seem really interested in their projects, and the students in my regular class did well on the vocabulary test and showed some good insight in their analysis of which writing came from students in the other class and which came from ChatGPT. I know we've talked pretty regularly about movie length, and if I remember correctly, you've said that an hour and a half is just about perfect for most movies. What I'm wondering is, first of all, why is that the case? What makes a movie that's significantly shorter than that feel too short? And likewise, why is it so difficult to tell a clear, crisp story in 3 hours rather than 2? And finally, what's an example of a movie that actually ought to be longer, and why do you think it should? So we're talking in generalities, obviously, because the truth is it's case by case. And there are some movies that are 2 hours, and that's the perfect length for those movies. And if you tried to cut them to 90 minutes, it would not be to the movie's benefit. And there is a very, very small number of films that are 3 hours or longer, and that is the right length for them. And if you cut too much out of them, if you cut anything out of them, it would be to the detriment of the film. But yeah, in general, as a rule, I would say 90 minutes is a good length to aim for. And obviously, this is subjective, and this is all my opinion. But if it's and the other thing is, I mean, there short films exist. Like there are short films that are brilliant, that are significantly shorter in many cases than 90 minutes. So 90 minutes is the right length for a feature film. If you want to make a film that's shorter than that, I mean, the real answer is a movie should be as long as it needs to be. And if you're making a movie and your movie only needs to be 25 minutes long, that's how long it should be. If your movie needs to be an hour and a half, that's how long it should be. If your movie needs to be 3 hours, first of all, really ask yourself, does my movie really need to be 3 hours? And if the honest answer is yes, then that's how long it needs to be. I think 90 minutes is good though, because 90 minutes is long enough to tell a fairly complex story, to have several things happen. Because it's kind of like the analogy is kind of like between like a short story and a novel, or even like a novella, like something that's a little longer. A short story is usually focused on one character and maybe one event. And it's fairly simple most of the time. Whereas a longer story, a novel, might also focus on one event, but it's more likely to be like a more complex event or a set of events, a series of events, a narrative that carries on for longer than you would see in a short story. So 90 minutes in a movie is long enough to do that. Is long enough to tell a story that falls into a 3-act structure as opposed to like a 1 or a 2-act structure. So it gives you the time to tell a story in that way. But 90 minutes is also a fairly comfortable amount of time for most people to sit still and pay attention. And so is 2 hours. Like between 90 minutes and 2 hours is a good range, because most people, you know, as long as you don't have to go to the bathroom or anything, is like, you know, all other things being equal, most people, once they get to adulthood, let's say, can sit down and pay attention to a movie for 2 hours without feeling like, oh God, this is taking forever, without feeling fidgety, you know. And also, I mean, obviously, if it's a good movie, I mean, there are 90-minute movies that feel like they're about 6 hours long because they're bad movies. But if it's a decent movie, just the amount of time is not that big of an ask. 90 minutes to 2 hours, that's not an unreasonable demand of an audience. When you start getting too far beyond that, you start making demands on the audience, on just the sheer endurance of the audience. And you can kind of draw another analogy to literature, and it's confusing the issue a little bit, because in this way I'm going to compare movies to short stories as opposed to longer works. But you know, the rule of thumb with a short story is that a short story should be of a length that could be comfortably read in one sitting. I think Edgar Allan Poe wrote that, and probably a bunch of people have said it since, but that's the general idea. A short story is a story that the reader can read in a single sitting. And a movie, because a movie is a single thing, a movie should be able to be comfortably watched in a single sitting. And that's the original reason why some movies that were extraordinarily long had intermissions, and really long movies still have intermissions, at least for their theatrical releases. Sometimes the intermissions are edited out of home video releases, but for a theatrical release, a really long movie has an intermission. And the main reason for that is to give the audience a physical break, because it's a very demanding thing to ask of an audience to sit in a seat for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, and just watch and pay continuous attention to a movie. You know, so that's hence intermission. But no, so a lot of it is like, is taking into account the demands that you are placing on your audience, in terms of their attention span and also just physically. And lastly, what's an example of a movie that should be longer? I'm being completely honest here. I can't think of one. If somebody has any, if people have suggestions in the chat, I'd be interested to hear them. But I've been thinking about this question all day, or at least since I saw it, since you submitted it. And I cannot think of a movie, a bad movie or a good movie, that I think would be improved by adding runtime to the movie. I think it's a more complex problem than that. I think if a movie is bad, it's almost never the right thing to say, well, they just should have made it longer. I cannot think of a bad movie, regardless of length, whether it was a short bad movie or a long bad movie. I cannot think of a bad movie that I think would be potentially improved by adding to it. I don't think that is a solution to a bad movie, to make it longer. On the other hand, I think a potential solution to many bad movies would be to make them shorter. And it's not as easy as that either, but I think that's closer to a valid answer than making it longer. I think you're more likely to improve a film by cutting stuff out than you are by adding stuff in. I'll put it that way. Joe McClory, there is a childish strain that seems to run through conservative politics, and I don't just mean Republicans. The idea that some things are inherently one way or the other, that Trump is good or bad, and everything he does is definitely that way because they are his things. Don't get me wrong, the things Trump does are bad, but not because he does them, but because they hurt people. This idea that someone or a group of people is good or bad and things they do are better or worse because they are who they are is demanding for a simplicity that reality will always refuse to give. This idea drives things like race science and IQ, but I repeat myself, this idea of a person being for you and saying anything against them, even asking them to show compassion, is an attack. I would call them children, but even children have object permanence that would let them know this is BS. Do you think it matters if I am right and conservative view is overly simplistic? Does it matter if they are just lying? I will say it doesn't matter to me if they're lying or not. I have long since left behind any interest in whether conservatives or bigots or, trolls, whoever. I have long since left behind any interest in whether they are sincere or not. Like, I don't care. Oh, he only says that to get attention. Oh, he only says that to get views. He doesn't really mean it. I don't care. He still said it. That's who he is, whether that's who he really thinks he is or not. That's who he is. So that part is irrelevant to me. I don't care. I judge people by what they do and by the impact that they have on other people, not by what they claim their real intentions are. I couldn't give less of a shit what you say your real intentions were, especially if you're causing harm to people. But I do think, I think you have something there in terms of the simplicity of their worldview. I think a lot of conservative thinking, and look, leftists are subject to this as well, right? Progressives are not immune to this problem, but I don't see it as often, or it's not as insidious on the left as I see it in the right, which is there's a lot of absolutist thinking. And that's kind of what you're describing here with, well, what Trump does is good because Trump did it. And Trump is on our side, so we're going to support anything Trump does because he's our guy. That's absolutist thinking, where you're divorcing your opinion and your judgment from the effect of anything. You're no longer saying, well, we should do this because this is a good idea. We should do this because this will help something, because this will achieve some goal we have. You're just saying, well, this is what we're doing, so we're going to support it because this is what we're doing, because this is what our guy wants to do. That is simplistic, but it's also absolutist. And I think that's really the problem, and that's why there is so little willingness to deviate from Trump, because they've been captured by absolutist thinking. Well, we can't go against Trump. Trump is our guy. It would be weakness to stand against Trump, even if they wanted to, which I think most of them probably don't even want to. But even if some of them did, they're too cowardly to actually do anything about it because, well, but it's Trump. Trump's our guy. We have to support our guy, right? That's what he wants to do, and that's what he should be allowed to do. He's our guy. You know, I think it's that absolutist thinking that is really dangerous, you know. Cormac, who has aged 2 years in the last 2 weeks. Oh boy. Greetings, Steve. I hope you're doing well. 11 days, Steve. 11 days. It has not even been a fortnight since his fading orangeness took office. I'm already exhausted. I almost sent in just a list of the awful that's already happened, but we need to stay in the fight, be sand in their gears where we can, and support local organizations as well. So my question is, favorite Guns N' Roses album? And why is it Appetite for Destruction? And Guns N' Roses song? And why is it Civil War? Not even on the same album. I know you're a man of many layers, Mr. Shives. I love the metaphor of be sand in the gears. I think that's absolutely something, that's one thing we should be aiming for, as well as supporting local organizations. That's very important. I agree. I co-sign that 100%. I actually think Appetite for Destruction might be my favorite Guns N' Roses album. And my favorite song, Civil War. First of all, Civil War is a great song. And holy shit. Listen to Civil War, which was recorded, 35 years ago? 36 years ago? And it's like, oh, fuck. Are they talking about now? Like, it's really, I mean, that's a cliche to say, oh, it's so timeless. But unfortunately it is. It sounds like it's describing not only the political situation they were perceiving back then, but right now as well. But no, I think what's my favorite Guns N' Roses song? Sweet Child of Mine. I mean, I know that's probably what everybody says, but I've said before how middle of the road and unsurprising my taste in music. Like Sweet Child of Mine is so good. And You Could Be Mine as well, which is very similar. Sweet Child of Mine and You Could Be Mine they're not quite the same song. You Could Be Mine is a little harder. But that's a good one too. I'd say Sweet Child of Mine is probably my favorite Guns N' Roses song. Although, actually, when I read your question, I hadn't heard Civil War for a long time. So earlier today, before I started the show, I listened to Civil War for the first time in a very long time. And I realized something that I couldn't believe I never made this connection before. But when Jack Black sings for Tenacious D, he is specifically making fun of Axl Rose. And like, I knew that he was making fun of just sort of like, metal band vocalists just in general. Like that's clearly what Tenacious D is. They're sort of mocking like, metal bands. But Jack Black is specifically making fun of Axl Rose. Like he does vocal things that are identical to vocal things that Axl Rose is. Like he is specifically making fun of Axl Rose when he sings Tenacious D. And I never realized that until this very day when I listened to Civil War. So that was pretty funny when that clicked, and I was like, holy shit, he's making fun of Axl Rose. Simon Moody. And after less than 2 weeks, I feel like Joe Biden looks. After the 99 yes votes to confirm Rubio, I lost it a little bit. I saw the slide towards a Trump dictatorship as all but unstoppable inside about 6 months. I've managed to pull back a little since, but these confirmations and the insane level of how unqualified the clowns are is still disturbing. As someone who is on the ground, do you get the feeling that when what remaining guardrails do push back, e.g. judges, will Trump be stopped by them? Will law enforcement and the military reject illegal orders? Yes, police unions did react to the January 6 pardons, but I don't see any indication of them having a lasting impact. 2 weeks in and the eternity of 4 more years and how much Trump will try to break with a lot more help this time makes me think that at some point a rail will snap and he will go full dictator. Are you more hopeful than I am? Please say yes. I'm depressing myself. I mean, I'm not going to assume anything until it happens. I'm also incredibly disappointed that Rubio got 99 votes. I think I said that in a video earlier. Like, if you're like, I don't, but I mean, this happened the last time Trump was president. And I felt the same way I feel now. No Democrat should ever vote for anything he wants, just as a matter of principle. And it doesn't make a difference in the outcome, because the Republicans have enough votes just from Republican senators that if they all stick to the party line and vote, he can get all of his people confirmed. So what, even if you're like, well, I believe that the government needs to function and Trump has earned the right to choose his people, like, even if that's your philosophy, it serves nobody other than Trump for Democrats to vote for his nominees. Fuck him. Don't vote for any of his people. Vote against every single fucking thing he wants you to vote for, just as a matter of principle, even if it doesn't make a difference. So at least you can go back home to your home state and say, I didn't vote for any of this shit. Right? Like, what is accomplished? Are we still in this fucking self-defeating bipartisan, like, well, we have to show that we're willing to work, we're willing to reach across the aisle? They don't care. Like, so that, yeah, I didn't exactly like spiral out because of it. But it does piss me off because there's no excuse for it. Like, what do you think is happening here? Don't vote for, I don't give a fuck if you will. Marco Rubio is a reasonable, I don't fucking care. Vote against all of his people. He's going to get who he wants anyway. So vote against all of his fucking people. But there has been others. Yeah, the courts have blocked some of his executive orders, have blocked some of his attempts to push forward his more radical immigration policies. Like, there have been efforts from lower in the government to slow down or halt his his actions, and that has been heartening. That's been good to see. That's probably just the best we're going to be able to do. We're going to have to just be in a pattern for the next 4 years of just holding him back, slowing him down, trying to stop him. You know, that's the situation we're in. He's the president, you know? So 4 years of this. And I mean, is he going to try to go full dictator? Of course. I don't expect that he will. I mean, yeah, he's going to try. Is he going to be able to? I don't know. I hope not. I hope there are enough people in the courts and in the military that would be willing to say, nope, we're not doing that. You know, there are enough people in the military that will say, I swore an oath to the Constitution, not to the president. You know, I swore an oath not to be your personal fighting force, but to serve the Constitution and to serve the people. And that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully there are enough people with that mindset that he won't be able to just go completely nuts. But I guess we'll see. Isaiah Taylor, you have the runway right in front of you. You peek through your space helmet out of the shuttle Atlantis as it roars downward at a 20-degree angle at 315 miles per hour. You toggle the landing gear controls. Gear down. You exclaim almost in a cheerful yell. The KSC runway is coming up fast. Touchdown, the commander yells. You're the pilot, Steve. Sorry, the question. Even as the bodies are still at the bottom of the Potomac, Trump is already blaming the crash on DEI. By the way, did you hear anything from your house in Maryland? Steve, do you see Republicans blaming DEI for past disasters, such as Challenger, the Apollo 1 fire, and Columbia? After all, both shuttles had minorities in their crews. How would you react if you heard a conservative say such awful things? I did Atlantis because I know how much you like the shuttle Atlantis. Well, thank you. I do. Atlantis was my favorite shuttle. No, I did not hear anything. I am not close enough to DC and to the site of the crash. The crash took place right near the airport in DC, and I'm 70 miles north of DC, so I'm not anywhere near close enough to have actually heard anything. No, I mean, if DEI had been a thing that they were talking about in the 80s or the 60s, surely, yes, they would have blamed Challenger or Apollo 1 or Columbia on DEI. Yes, of course. If that, because Columbia was the early 2000s, but same kind of thing. Like, no, of course they would have. If that had been their chosen issue, which it is now, it's like their go-to scapegoat for everything, DEI. You know, Oh, Trump tripped and fell down the stairs. Fucking DEI. It's probably a black guy who installed the carpet that he tripped over. You know, like whatever, they'll blame everything they possibly can on DEI because that's their scapegoat du jour. And if it had been the scapegoat du jour in what 1967 when Apollo 1 happened, then they would have blamed it on that. Of course they would have. They would have blamed Challenger on it. They would have blamed anything on it because that's just the kind of shitty people that they are. Russell, hey Steve, long sigh, only 11 days into this new administration, and I can't watch anymore, nor do I have the energy to ask you any questions on it yet. So let's discuss something fun. I know I have yet to ask you much about another set of my personal favorite of shows, Angel and Buffy. So off the top, which show do you like better? Which finale do you like better? Which is your favorite Buffyverse character? And which character did you like the least or just couldn't stand? Easy questions that will help me format some further Buffy Angel questions down the road. Hope you are all well. See you shortly. Yeah, I love Buffy and Angel. So, okay, let me go through these quickly. Which show do I like better? Angel. Which finale did I like better? Angel by far. I thought Angel's last episode was... I mean, Buffy's final episode was fine, but Angel's last episode was way, way, way better than Buffy's last episode. Favorite Buffyverse character, probably Spike. Which character did I not? I can't really think of an important character from either show that I didn't like. I think I liked or at least found tolerable pretty much everybody. I can't think of a character from either show that I couldn't stand. No, I think I liked everybody. I mean, if you can think of somebody, is there a character that like is a very unpopular character in the fan base that you're thinking of? Because when I remember watching both shows when they were on, and I mean, there was no equivalent of like Loaxana Troy on TNG, where like as soon as that character showed up, I was like, oh fuck, I have to sit through another one of these. Like I don't. There was no character like that for me on Buffy. Or Angel. I pretty much was fine with everybody. And last one from Brian Baker. Steve, Trump and the maggots have been decrying DEI, and Trump went so far as to blame the plane crash in DC on DEI. I, like you, am an old white cis male, but isn't getting information and experience the best thing in any job? Shouldn't work relationships like between the boss and workers and between workers themselves be inclusive of as many different people to make sure everyone is represented? DEI doesn't mean that people are hired to fill out a racial or sexual lineup. It gives all people equity and a chance based on their abilities. Being equal doesn't mean everyone loses rights, but it does mean that it's a level playing field and everyone starts from the same place. By the way, for your movie review, may I suggest Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the 1970s? Thanks for your work. I would love to do the 1970s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I think that would be fantastic. I think we did the original already on late seating, but I would love to do the 70s version. Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love Star Trek, because this is one of the core messages of Star Trek. Diversity is a strength. Diversity is a good thing. Multiculturalism is a good thing. It's not just something that we should tolerate and we should be okay with and we should be non-threatened by. It's a positively good thing that we should be embracing and helping to bring about. You know, it should be positively fought for, not just not fought against, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. Having a diverse group of people is an asset. And DEI programs are not about giving jobs to unqualified people from marginalized communities. DEI programs are about making sure that existing systems of oppression do not keep qualified people from those communities out of those opportunities. But there is a zero-sum mindset in the minds of a lot of people who are threatened by DEI. I mean, a lot of it is just flat out racism. Let's get that straight. A lot of it is just flat out racism or misogyny or transphobia and homophobia or xenophobia or whatever, bigotry. We'll just say bigotry. That's a lot of it. But it's also this zero-sum mentality where people believe that if this minority group over there gains rights that I, in the more privileged group, therefore must be necessarily losing rights, and therefore I should be against it. And that's not the way that works, right? That's just not the way that works. So that's a big part of it too. But no, I agree with you completely. DEI and programs, regardless of what we call them, that seek to level the playing field in terms of racism and sexism and discrimination against queer people and all the other forms of inequality that, exist, like programs that try to correct for those, are good things. And we should not be threatened by them. We should be helping them and encouraging them and hoping that they are successful, because a fair and equitable and just and diverse and pluralistic society is a strong society and is good for everybody. Those of us who are in the more privileged classes and those of us who are in the underprivileged classes. It's good for everybody, but you can't tell that to some people, can you? Okay, that is it for the patron and member questions. I will be turning my attention to the live chat in just a minute. But first, it is time to debut a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. This will go up as a standalone YouTube short on my channel tomorrow, but because you, my wonderful viewers of Ask Away, are here right now, you get to see the new Stuffy and Friends short before anybody else. So please enjoy the premiere of this brand new Stuffy and Friends short.
So, if climate change does keep getting worse and worse, what happens?
I'm not a climate scientist, but my understanding is that the weather will increasingly swing from one extreme to another, while sea levels gradually rise, forcing people who live near the oceans to relocate further inland, turning many of them into refugees. It's not a pleasant prospect.
Right, but what if we don't want all those things to happen?
Then we need to take drastic action to prevent the worst effects of climate change, assuming that's still even possible.
But what if we don't do that, and we still don't want all that stuff you said to happen? What do we do about it?
You're asking what we're going to do to escape the consequences of climate change if we fail to stop climate change?
Right, yes, exactly.
We probably won't be able to do anything. We'll have to just do our best to live with the consequences.
So things would just be awful and there would be nothing we could do about it?
There's a lot of that going around lately.
I don't care for that.
Me neither. But you asked the question, and I didn't want to just lie and tell you that everything is going to be fine.
No, do that.
Really?
Yes. Soothe me with baseless reassurance.
Okay. Don't worry. Everything is going to be fine.
Thank you, Stuffy. That makes me feel a lot better.
It does?
Yes, of course. I trust you. I know you'd never lie to me.
But you specifically asked me.
Now tell me I'm never going to die.
How can I possibly...
Just tell me!
I shouldn't be laughing at my own shit, but I like that ending. Anyway, that's the new Stuffy short. Let's turn now to the live chat. Hello, everybody. Oh, Rose here says, I just tuned in for real. Oh, good. Well, you got just in time. You're just in time to see the Stuffy short. Stephen G. Clenard says, why do you hate mediocre white men? It's self-loathing. It's self-loathing. I'm taking out my own insecurities on the world. Isaiah, you saw that. Yes, somebody noticed the doomsday clock. Yes, the page on my monitor in the shot of me in that Stuffy short. It's the Wikipedia page for the doomsday clock. I'm glad somebody saw that. Oh yeah, that was a fun little joke I threw in there. Some super chats coming in. Let me see here. Cast Iron Chaos, thank you very much. Says, I've given up pointing out instances where Trump breaks the law because it doesn't matter. The law won't touch him, so what the hell can we do? Yeah, I mean, like it's what I was saying earlier about the idea of it being a Gish Gallop presidency, you know? And yeah, I mean, there's nothing we as private citizens can do. If the people who are actually tasked with enforcing the law aren't going to do anything, there's not a whole lot we can do, unfortunately. Carlisle the Cinephile, here's my Steve Shives headcanon. The Mirror Universe version of Steve never grew out of his young Republican phase, is trying to get a job with the Daily Wire, and is clean shaven. Dun dun dun. that sounds terrifyingly plausible. Dana says, you just love it when Steve makes an ass of himself, don't you? I do, because it's so much fun to play. And you know what's great about when you make fun of yourself, even if it's through like a fictional version of yourself, the great thing about that is you can make almost any joke. As long as you're not doing like frankly, blatantly like racist and sexist, you know, you can make like really harsh, angry, insensitive jokes. And if you are the butt of the joke, it's usually a safe joke. And I love that. That's one of the greatest things about self-deprecating humor. You know, people who say, oh, you can't joke about anything anymore. Have you tried making jokes about yourself? Because the boundaries there are pretty wide. Kirok 2011 with a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, perfect Buffy, lie to me. Ha ha. It's been a while since I watched Buffy. I'm not sure if I remember that one. Plasma Burn Death says, we'll try this again, hopefully without a glitch. Any updates on Michael Worley and the Project 2025 War Room MAGA GOP new season idea? Really hoping to see it if possible. Thanks. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't hold my breath. I have no plans to do any new Michael Worley stuff. At least not for the near future. I mean, again, like I said before, like I love that character. The idea that you floated about that is not a bad idea, but I just don't feel, I don't think that's it. And yeah, I don't have any specific plans to go back to Michael Worley anytime soon. But like I said, you know, I'm certainly not writing him off permanently. Steve Schmeling says, Steve, you're not going to die. Thank you very much. See, Stuffy wouldn't do that for me. I'm glad that you're a true friend. Don't tell Stuffy I said that. Kira with another super chat. I'm curious. The fact that the Angel finale ends on a cliffhanger doesn't bother you. Why do you think it's the better finale? Also, the gift was supposed, and then I guess, I don't consider the Angel finale to end on a cliffhanger. I don't think that's a cliffhanger. I think that is the fight goes on. That's how I interpret that. It's not, you know, see you next time, folks. Wait till you see what the end of this story is. No, that's the end of the story. And the end is the fight goes on. And that's what I love about it. I love that the final line of the series is Angel about to swing a sword at some kind of monster off screen that is attacking them. And his final line in the show is, let's go to work. That's an ending, buddy. That's not a cliffhanger. That's an ending. And it's a fucking splendid ending. Okay, there's a couple super chats from earlier that I missed. Let me go through these. By the way, Debbie, thank you very much for your super chat. Buddy Aces said, everyone says violence isn't the answer, but history proves otherwise. The question is, where is the line where violence is the answer? No one says. Well, it's hard to tell ahead of time is the thing. Sean O'Sullivan says, basic manners, no hats indoors, American or not. That's a dumb rule. I think that's a dumb rule. Although, if that is the rule where I am, I will take my hat off. Like if I am someplace where the rule is no hats, I will take my hat off, but I will still privately think that that's a dumb rule. And it is certainly not a rule in my house. William Long with a super chat. Thank you very much, William. Says, Steve, favorite John Carpenter film if you have one. He's perhaps my favorite American filmmaker. David Lynch passing away on John's birthday of all days was a storm of complicated emotions for me. Admire both's art so much. Ooh, that's a good question. Favorite Carpenter film? God. Maybe The Thing. It's really tough because I love The Thing. I love Halloween. I love They Live. I love a lot of Carpenter. Carpenter as a filmmaker in general is just one of my favorites. Probably The Thing if I had to choose one. Okay. Daryl Lett says, someone said Trump shouldn't have 312 electoral votes with 49.8% of the vote. In 1992, Bill Clinton had 43% of the vote and had 370 electoral votes. Should we have a French runoff? Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the problems with the electoral college is that the number of like you can have an electoral college landslide without having a popular vote landslide. Because that there are times when there are ways to win an electoral college, an overwhelming electoral college victory without also winning a popular vote victory. That's one of the flaws with that system. Should we have a French runoff? Or should we just do instant runoff voting? That would be great in my book. Super chat from Philip Kehoe. Thank you very much. Says, having watched Amadeus recently and reading about the play, I discovered Salieri tells Mozart he's been against him all along at the end and had a strong reaction against that ending. Yeah, I have not seen the play. I know that the play differs from the movie in some significant ways. I've never seen the play, so I don't know exactly what the differences are, but I don't really care for that ending either. I don't like the idea of Mozart knowing that Salieri was against him before he dies. I think that it's a better, the way the movie handled it, I thought was a good ending, where Mozart dies believing that Salieri was his friend. Because the story is about Salieri. Like, even though Mozart is Mozart, and even though the title is taken from Mozart's name, the main character is Salieri. And at the end of the story, at least again, as shown in the film, I can't speak to the original play, but in the film, by the time we get to the end, Salieri is very conflicted about his plot against Mozart and his machinations against Mozart, and the fact that Mozart is dying as a result of Salieri's actions. And that's a final sort of knife in Salieri's heart that, yes, Mozart dies, which is what Salieri thought he wanted, but Mozart dies not knowing that Salieri was responsible for killing him. Mozart dies believing that Salieri was his friend, perhaps was his only true friend, when the opposite is what the truth is. And it allows it to make sense how we see old man Salieri at the beginning, when he's just so overcome with guilt in his old age that he attempts suicide. Like, that makes sense in the light of what we see at the end of the story. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't speak specific. I might see a really awesome production of Amadeus on the stage someday, and that'll be the ending, and I'll think it works great. I don't know. I can't say because I haven't seen it, but just going by what you've said and going by the film, which I love and have seen countless times, I seem the way the movie handles it, it sounds better to me. Super chat from Carlisle the Cinephile. One of my favorite aspects of Amadeus is the fact that Salieri is a biased and unreliable narrator. Makes the historical inaccuracies make sense. Yes, I suppose it does. I mean, I don't care about the historical inaccuracies. And that's something that I think when we reviewed the movie on Late Seating, that's something that Jason and I argued about a little bit, because Jason is typically much more interested and much more likely to be put off by historical inaccuracies than I am. Like, my position has long been, as if it's a good movie, I don't care if it's historically accurate at all. Even if it is supposedly based on true stories or real people or whatever, I don't give a shit. If it's a good movie, that's all I care about. The real life relationship between Salieri and Mozart was very, very, very different from how it is depicted in Amadeus. I don't care. I do not care at all. It does not affect my opinion of the film at all. But you're right. If we do take Salieri as an unreliable narrator, then you can kind of, square that circle if that is something that matters to you. Zerulean 14, Peter Schaffer rewrote the ending like 4 times. Yeah. And I think I remember it was either in one of the making of documentaries or something I read about it. Apparently, like, the initial phase of developing the movie consisted of Milos Forman, the director of the film, and Peter Schaffer just sitting in a room and listening to Mozart for like days and just talking to each other about the music and about what they wanted the film to be, and sort of coming together to decide, okay, it's your play, but it's going to be my movie. So what do we want this to be? You know, which I think is a really interesting way to approach it. Carlisle, another super chat, says, I honestly don't care about historical accuracies if it's a good movie either. I just like how you can interpret the film that way. Yeah, I mean, it's the movie has a lot going for it. The movie has a lot of complexity to it, which I think is definitely, you know, a point in its favor. Philip says, and maybe if I saw the play, that ending would work, but for the film, I think denying Salieri that vindictive triumph works brilliantly. Yeah. Well, that's another thing. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, you know, I want him to know it was me, you know, like, I don't want to shoot somebody in the back. I would tap them on the shoulder so they would turn around and they would know it was me, and then I would kill them. Right. Like, and there's that element of it too. I go more toward, well, it enhances Salieri's guilt, you know, and it shows us that it gives Salieri something to let us in the audience see that he is not completely on board with this anymore, you know, that this has not turned out the way he thought it would. And part of it is, you know, he really does seem to enjoy the experience of working with Mozart at the end and assisting him as he tries to finish the Requiem. Like, there's a real rush of creativity and joy in that experience for Salieri. Like, he kind of finally gets to touch Mozart's genius. And then Mozart dies because of Salieri, although the movie never explicitly makes it clear. It's sort of like Salieri drove him to his grave. There's nothing that Salieri does like physically to Mozart to kill him. He just psychologically sort of tortures him and pushes him to his grave. But still, you know, Salieri is in a sense responsible for his death. And it lets us see that, like, at the end there, he's not exactly sure that this is what he wanted. And to me, one of the most beautiful lines in the movie, and I think he's being completely honest when he says this, and when Salieri says to Mozart, not right at the end, but close to the end, when he says to Mozart, I tell you, you are the greatest composer known to me. And he means it. Like, he's being sincere, and he's saying it to this guy that he hates, that he's been trying to kill for years and resented and, you know, wanted to usurp his position. And yet he genuinely loves this guy's music and genuinely respects this guy's talent. And it's even more of a knife in Salieri's heart because he's the only one in the movie who really gets it. So when Salieri says to Mozart, you are the greatest composer known to me, it means more than if anyone else in the movie had said it to Mozart. And yet Salieri is the one who's killing him. It's, God damn, it's such a great movie. It's such a great movie. Oh, Metalhead Bill says, just popping in to say, I enjoy your content. Keep up the good work. And I don't just mean Star Trek. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, Steve, I didn't know that. Steve Schmeling says, John Irwin, the voice of He-Man, just passed away. I didn't know that. I'm very sorry to hear that. He was great. No, I didn't know that. Well, thanks for telling me, but no, I wasn't aware. I think Alan Oppenheimer died several years ago, unfortunately. He was the voice of Skeletor. And many other characters too. And I mean, he was a very prolific voice actor and a live action actor as well. He was in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine as well. He was the captain of the Starship Odyssey that was attacked and blown up by the Dominion toward the beginning of that storyline. Yeah, I didn't know that John Irwin died. That's a shame. That's a shame. Yeah, Cast Iron Chaos. Schindler's List is another example that I use a lot. Cast Iron Chaos says it's a movie, not a documentary. Same way with Schindler's List. The ending of Schindler's List, where the Jews that Schindler has saved sort of salvage all of their gold, like from gold teeth or jewelry or whatever, and they melt it down and they make a pin for Schindler, or no, they make a ring for Schindler that is engraved, and in the engraving says, "He who saves a single life saves the world entire." And they give that to Schindler at the end as they're about to part ways, as a way of saying thank you to him for saving them. And that never happened. Like that's a completely fictional event. But it's the perfect ending for that movie, you know. Because then we're talking about guilt a lot, Salieri's guilt. Schindler's guilt then comes pouring out of him, where he looks at the ring and he looks at the car and everything, he looks at all of his possessions and he says, I could have gotten more people, you know, I could have sold the car. I could have gotten 10 more people. And then finally he takes off his Nazi pin that he has been wearing this whole time, like to keep up appearances with the Nazi party in Germany. And he says, with this pin, if I had sold this pin is gold. I could have gotten one more person. And that's the note that Schindler leaves on. Like, he doesn't see the people that he saved. He sees the one person that he could have gotten that he didn't. And that's the note that we leave him with at the end of the movie. And again, is that the real Oskar Schindler? Probably not. Did that event actually happen? No. Do I care when I watch that movie? No, I don't. It's the perfect ending to that film. It's a beautiful ending. I would not want to change it for anything. I don't care if the real Schindler wasn't like that. I don't care if that actual event never happened. Makes no difference to me at all. Art is telling lies to tell a deeper truth. I think it's not the exact quote, but that's the idea. An artist lies to tell a deeper truth, and that is a great example of that. Carlisle the Cinephile laughs in a high-pitched Mozart-like manner. I can't do it. I can't get to that. I can't get as high in the laugh as Tom Hulce could with Mozart. He's yeah. Kirok with a super chat. Oppenheimer is still alive, Steve. He is 94 years old. Is he really? Alan Oppenheimer. He is. You're right. I thought he died a few years ago. He is still alive. That's fantastic. Well, you know what that means. Skeletor wins. Skeletor has defeated He-Man. How about that? Hannah Brown says, damn, I guess I need to watch Amadeus. I really think you should. It's one of my favorite films. Ash Marsden said, have you ever seen the film Infinity? I have not. Josh Mayfield, Oppenheimer died in 1967. Very, very different Oppenheimer. Oh, shit. 89 minutes to midnight. Yikes, Steve, Isaiah says. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Is that a movie, 89 minutes to midnight? Yes, Frank Langella, who, of course, was the live-action Skeletor. He still lives, yes. I guess both Skeletors of note still live. Dana says, I know that feeling because teachers often hear, if you can make a difference to just one student, it's worth it. And like, no, one, only one? Jesus fucking Christ, no. Yeah, Dana, Tom Lear is, but like Tom Lear, as far as I know, has never been in direct conflict with either Skeletor or He-Man. At best, Tom Lear is neutral in the Skeletor He-Man conflict, which again is now over because He-Man is no longer with us and Skeletor remains. Until next time, He-Man. Oh, shit. No, there won't be a next time. Oh, 89, 80. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, Steve clarified it. The Doomsday Clock. Yeah, 89 seconds to midnight. Yes, that's they recently it's the closest to midnight the Doomsday Clock has ever been. They nudged it a second closer to midnight. So yes, it is now 89 seconds to midnight. Oppenheimer was the bomb. Nicely done, Stephen. Steve Schmelik says, who would have thought that all Skeletor had to do was wait a while? I know, right? Oh, Hannah says, give me opinions on Subspace Rhapsody, the musical episode of Strange New Worlds. I thought it was great. The main objection I had to it was I thought the songs sounded too much like each other. The songs were all roughly in the same style. And I felt like it would have been better if they could have, because this is like their one shot. This is the only, I'm sure, I mean, it's at least the only musical episode a Star Trek show is going to do for a while. I don't think they're going to start pumping out musical episodes regularly. And it was the first one. And it would have been nice to hear some different musical styles instead, but the songs all kind of were the same style, except for number one's song that she does with Kirk, where they do the little dance. That's a different style. That's more like a Gilbert and Sullivan kind of song. But most of the rest of them were just sort of like generic modern musical, modern Broadway musical style songs. And some of them are catchy, some of them are good, but there's a lot of sameness in the sound to it. And I thought that was a missed opportunity. But in general, I thought it was a really fun episode. I liked it a lot. Kirak says, Steve, sorry, given everything Trump has done in 11 days leading up to pausing, celebrating to MLK Day, I'm just so appalled. And no, Skeletor can't win. He-Man died. Yes, he made sure Skeletor was defeated. I mean, I'm with you. I understand where you're coming from emotionally. But Skeletor is still alive, bud. He-Man's dead. Skeletor is alive. I call that winning. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it for, you know what? Would Skeletor really be worse than what we have now? I mean, Skeletor, if you really go back and watch the show, Skeletor never really did anything that bad. He didn't even really try to do anything that bad. Skeletor just wanted to be in charge. He never really wanted to kill anybody. He never even killed Beastman, and he hated Beastman. Beastman was his own guy, and he never even killed Beastman. Carlisle says, thank you for the super chat once again. Carlisle says, think Skeletor is sitting in his evil lair asking what he's going to do with himself now that he doesn't have an arch nemesis to battle against. Yeah, I mean, he'll probably try to start some shit with some of the other surviving masters of the universe, but it just won't be the same. He'll try to go fight Stratos or Buzz Off or something, and he's just going to be like, what's the point? What's the fucking point? None of them is He-Man. Fuck it. And he's just going to retire to Snake Mountain, and people probably won't see him much anymore. It's just not worth it without He-Man. It'll be that kind of situation. Kirak says, Steve, changing channels. Did you do a Section 31 on Enterprise? I'm not sure. If not, what did you think of it? I need to rewatch it before I can say. I mean, they really... Section 31 was mentioned on Enterprise, and I know they said that Reed had been a member, right? And was kind of recruited back in at some point. But I mean, it wasn't like a major presence on Enterprise. It certainly doesn't sound, I don't have a very strong memory of it, other than I know they did a little bit of Section 31 shit. But it's not, none of it was as memorable as the Sloan stuff that they did on Deep Space Nine. Yeah, Stephen, the Way to Eden and TOS was the closest. Yeah, and all the music. I was going to say the music there was all diegetic, but the music in Subspace Rhapsody was diegetic too, because they were affected by a subspace anomaly that was making them sing. So they all knew they were singing in the story, they were aware of it. So that was all diegetic too. Nishik and Taki. I mean, generally, I'm not a fan of musicals either. But I mean, I really liked the Strange New Worlds musical episode. I thought it was fun and funny, and I liked the way they actually used some of the songs to push some character arcs forward in meaningful ways. I thought it was really well done. Oh, Brian, this is interesting. Got a chance to see Mark Hamill play Wolfgang in Amadeus back in the late 80s. Great production. Wish Nimoy could have played Salieri. Yeah, I think I've heard of that. I've heard of Mark Hamill playing Mozart on stage. Yeah, that does sound interesting. And And of course, I guess the great Salieri from the stage was Ian McKellen. And boy, I wish I could have seen Ian McKellen play Salieri on stage. I bet that was amazing. John Stewart says, any thoughts on maintaining solidarity? Seeing a lot of division and bickering among groups that should be working together just as hard. No, I agree. We should be in solidarity with each other. I mean, we should acknowledge our differences, and we should not pretend that the differences aren't important when they are. But at the end of the day, all of us who see what's happening and who are worried about it and threatened by it and know that the people who are now in charge are a great danger to the people of this country and to the Constitution of this country and to the future of this country as a democratic republic, we need to, despite our differences, we all need to be pulling together to support each other in what will probably be very difficult times ahead, and also to be pushing things in the right direction and to all be pushing together. Now, I think solidarity is very important. Ren, did your question send? Let me go back and see. I probably missed it because it was buried by other stuff in the chat. What did Ren say? Hey, Steve, just wanted to ask this, even though it's not anything political, what are your thoughts on the classic 1980s Thomas the Tank Engine? You know what? I don't think I ever watched Thomas the Tank Engine. Maybe a little bit here and there, just little snippets of it when I was little, but no, I never actually watched enough of it to have an opinion on it. Isaiah says, to be fair, Reed would totally be in Section 31. John Burns. Hi, John. Watching Sports Puck. Have a great... Thank you very much, my friend. Enjoy the hockey game. Now, Steve, I did know that Mark Hamill auditioned for the movie. I have to say, I mean, I'm sure that Mark Hamill would have been a fine Mozart, and I'm sure he did fine on stage. But, I mean, I can't imagine. And like I said, I mean, Ian McKellen was from what I'm told, was like the definitive Salieri on stage. But I cannot imagine anybody playing those roles in the film other than Tom Hulce and F. Murray Abraham. I mean, they were both so incredibly brilliant as Mozart and Salieri, especially F. Murray Abraham. I mean, one of the great performances in the history of the movies. One of my favorite performances by any actor ever is F. Murray Abraham as Salieri. So it's really hard for me to believe that. It's hard for me to see anybody else in those roles in that movie. Nishikantagi says, maybe I'll go back and watch that Strange New Worlds episode as everyone raves about. I mean, it's worth it. Look, even if you end up not liking it, which is fine, you know, it's fine to watch it and say it's not your thing. It doesn't work for you, but it's worth at least watching. It's one episode. It's an hour. You know, it's one episode of a show. If you watch it and you didn't like it, you watched a thing you didn't like. That's okay. You know, and now you know. You watched it and you're like, okay, I didn't think I would like it and I didn't. Okay. You know, or maybe you'll watch it and you'll think, actually, this is pretty good. I didn't think I'd like it, but I do. Maybe that'll happen. You don't know. So yeah, check it out. Cerulean, yes, the old man makeup on F. Murray Abraham and Amadeus is so good. I was watching, what was I watching recently? I think it was the movie Here, the new Robert Zemeckis movie that came out last year with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, and the old man makeup, the old person makeup in that they used on Tom Hanks and Robin Wright when their characters are older, and also Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany plays Tom Hanks's father, and he ages from like a young man to an old man. So we see him in some old age makeup toward the end as well. And it's not bad. Like, it's not terrible old person makeup, but it's like, I mean, the aging makeup that they put on Abraham in Amadeus is just so much better. It's some of the best old age makeup I've ever seen in a movie. I think because they don't overdo it. Like they don't do too much. And it looks plausible. He looks like a person, not a person with a bunch of shit glued to his face, which I think is the danger that you run into. I mean, his old age makeup looks amazing and does not hinder his performance at all. Like some of his best scenes are the Old Man Salieri scenes. Some of those Old Man Salieri scenes where he's narrating but is acting his heart out as he's narrating are just amazing. And the old age makeup is not a barrier to that whatsoever. Super chat from Hannah Brown. Thank you, Hannah. Says, thank you for answering Not Enough Space to Blab. The cross to bear of the verbose. Stephen, exactly. At worst, you watch the episode, and at worst, it ruins your childhood. And I mean, come on, whose childhood can't stand to be ruined a little bit every once in a while, right? Let me go ahead and do my wrap up. Isaiah, going to watch TNG season 1 tonight. Good luck. Oh, Hannah says, sorry, I'm broke. No need to apologize. You don't I mean, if $3 was too much, you don't have to do that. Like, please don't ever feel the need to offer a super chat if you can't afford it. But I mean, thank you very much. If you're broke, that $3 means a hell of a lot to me. I really appreciate it. But no need to apologize. God, believe me, I've been broke in my life. No need to apologize for being broke, and always, feel free to look after yourself especially before you throw money at some dickhead on YouTube. But I really, really appreciate it. Philip says, I was also really impressed with Elizabeth Barrage's Constant. Yes, she was amazing. I believe she was also nominated for Best Actress. I know Tom Hulce and F. Murray Abraham were both nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars that year. And of course, F. Murray Abraham won. And I believe Elizabeth Barrage was nominated for Best Actress as well, and richly deserved. She gave an amazing performance as Stanzi. Okay. Now I'm going to wrap up the show and then I'll come back. So if anybody has any final questions or comments, feel free to throw them in the chat as I'm wrapping things up, and I will make a final peek at the live chat before we end the stream just to make sure I get to as many people's questions and comments as possible. But if you have enjoyed this live stream, if you enjoy my YouTube stuff in general, and you would like to support this channel and enable me to continue to do this sort of thing, you can do that in a couple of ways. You can become a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives, or you can click the join button right here on the YouTube channel and become a channel member. Either one of those helps me out tremendously, whether you pay $1 a month or $5 a month or $10 a month or however much you can afford and you think I'm worth. Believe me, it adds up and it really makes a difference in my life and it really helps me out. And I appreciate it so much. So click the join button to become a member or go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Either way, for any level of support in either of those, one of the perks that you get is you get to submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away streams. And those are the questions that I answer in the first part of the show. So take advantage of that if you like. And also, in addition to my YouTube stuff, I am on a couple of podcasts that you might enjoy. Of course, there's Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I'm on alongside the brilliant and hilarious Jason Harding, my very best friend, who does most of the work on that show, by the way. He does all the editing and the uploading and stuff. But that's the show where Jason and I give reviews to classic films that have a certain reputation, whether it's a good reputation or a bad reputation. And we watch them anew and decide for ourselves whether that movie deserves whatever reputation it has. And our new episode of Late Seating, our most recent episode that we recorded last week, is our review of the classic 1962, I believe, black comedy / horror movie, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a classic film. You can hear our review of it. It was a really fun show to do, and it's a great movie. If you've never seen Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, I highly recommend it. And I am also on another podcast with Jason called The Ensign's Log, which might be of interest to you if you come here looking for Star Trek stuff. It is a Star Trek-themed improv comedy podcast with myself and Jason, and also our very own Dana Cole, who has been with us in the live chat tonight as usual, and our newest cast member who joined us this season, Ananda, who is now, we are now a foursome of regulars on late seating, and it's been fantastic. It really feels like a complete show, and our improvs and interactions between the four of us are always a lot of fun to record and are hopefully fun to listen to. And we play original characters that we have created who exist in the Star Trek universe, and our antics are kind of taking place as stuff from actual Star Trek shows is happening in the background. And it's a really fun show to do. And if you enjoy Star Trek and if you enjoy funny Star Trek stuff, hopefully you will enjoy the Ensign's Log. So give that a listen as well. And also don't forget, our friend Some Random Geek was posting links in the live chat earlier. You can find the links he was posting as well as more if you go to charitylinks.page, which is linked in the video description as well. And there you can find the links that Geek was sharing in the live chat, and begging bowls, GoFundMe's, other sort of crowdfunding sites, and fundraisers for folks who need a helping hand, who need help getting the bills paid, putting food on the table, and also some organizations that can always use a few extra dollars. So if you have a few bucks to spare and you would like to support a good cause or support someone in need, please make use of the resources available in charitylinks.page and help somebody out if you can. I know that Geek appreciates it, and so do I. So now, before I wrap things up, let me take one last pass through the live chat and see what else anybody has to say, and then we'll call it a night. Kopesh says, "How are you doing tonight, Steve?" I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you very much. Hannah, you can have it. Hannah says, "Immediately implementing the cross to bear of the verbose." Take it and run with it, my friend. T. Mosby says, "Yo, Steve, fellow Marylander love here." Thank you very much. Good to be a Marylander, isn't it? We do have the best flag. And it's a pretty nice state, all things considered. Hannah Brown says, "Broke is my self-deprecating word for affordable. Thanks again." Well, I'm glad to know that you're not broke. You're just broke-ish. I'm happy to hear that. Kopesh says, "Thoughts on the idea that why properties like Star Trek and Star Wars, which are leftist in origin, are being hobbled by these terrible series due to a desire to minimize the effect of leftist media?" I don't know if that's the conscious reason. I don't know if there are people like pulling the strings going, "We've got to make this less leftist." I think, to hobble leftist media. I think it's more a desire to reach the widest audience possible and wanting to make shows in such a way that it doesn't possibly offend people in the audience. And now people on the right have become so strident and so thin-skinned and so reactionary that studios, which were always gun-shy about doing anything controversial to begin with, are now even more so. So it's just a lot more difficult to get openly, brazenly, unapologetically progressive stuff made than it used to be. Which, it's the same result and it sucks, but I don't know if all of it is a conscious desire to limit leftist media because they oppose leftist politics. It's more studios being cowards and studios wanting to maximize their profit by reaching the widest audience possible. Daryl Letts, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, and a dead rat and a dead bird. Don't forget there's a dead parakeet as well. But yes, that is the cast summary of whatever happened to Baby Jane. And Victor Buono, who is excellent as well, and is neither a dead rat nor a dead bird. Console Faust Roboto, if fans of Star Trek are called Trekkies, are fans of Steve Shives called Shives? I hope so. I think someone else, the Shiven, the Steves. Shive, I like Shives or Shivesies. Gedrin Y, quick question. Keith David or Tom Hanks? Oh man, that's tough. Keith David, if only for the voice. If only for the voice. I mean, I love Tom Hanks. I'd hate to lose Tom Hanks. But like without Keith David, who would narrate all those Ken Burns documentaries? in addition to his other acting work that is fantastic. God, if you make me choose, if it's a Sophie's choice, I think I have to choose Keith David. That voice is one of a kind. Alan Zenfance Jones says, check out the Onion bit on Star Trek trivia. Mayhem, hilarious. I don't know if I don't know if I've seen that. I do know, I remember there was a really great bit on the Onion, on one of the Onion's video, well, the Onion News Network videos that they did like way back in 2009 when the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie came out. And they did one of the funniest bits of Star Trek satire I've ever seen, where they did a story about it where the headline was Star Trek fans denounce new Star Trek movie as fun and watchable. And I thought, that's perfect. That's perfect. But I don't know about the trivia thing. I'll have to look that up. All right. I believe that is it. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all so much for being with me. As always, thank you for the awesome questions and comments and stuff to talk about and super chats. Thank you so much for those, as always. And to those of you who are patrons and members, thanks especially to you for being continuing support for the channel. I could not do this without you. Please, everybody. Okay. CMX says, could the chat room be called the Shivery? Sure, fuck it. Let's make this as egomaniacal as possible. Let's give little Batman-esque nicknames to every little part of it. Anyway, thank you all for being with me. Thank you all for being so much fun, as always. I will see you in 2 weeks for another one of these, and I will see you many, many times before that as well. So take care, everybody. Have a good night.